Rain was hitting the windows of the coffee shop like tiny drumbeats. It was one of those typical Thursday evenings where nothing special ever happens. At least, that's what Daniel thought as he sat in his favorite corner spot, staring at his laptop screen. The coffee shop was packed as usual. People were chatting, laughing, and typing away on their devices. The smell of fresh coffee and cinnamon filled the air. Daniel had been coming to this place for almost 2 years now. Same spot, same order, same routine. He liked it that way. Predictable, safe, comfortable. He was working on a logo design for a small bakery. The deadline was tomorrow, but he wasn't worried. Daniel was good at his job. Graphic design came naturally to him. It was dealing with people that made him nervous. Behind a computer screen, he was confident. In real life, not so much. His coffee was getting cold, but he kept sipping it anyway. That's when the bell above the door rang. Daniel looked up out of habit. He always did that when someone new walked in. It was like a reflex. And then he saw her. She stood in the doorway, shaking water droplets from a black umbrella. Her coat was dark red, almost burgundy, and her hair was slightly wet from the rain. She wasn't doing anything unusual. Just looking around the crowded coffee shop, trying to find a place to sit. But something about her caught his attention. Maybe it was the way she carried herself. There was something different about her presence. Daniel told himself to look away, to get back to work. But his eyes wouldn't listen. He watched as she closed her umbrella and took a deep breath, like she was preparing herself for something. The coffee shop was loud. Music played from the speakers. People talked and laughed. But in Daniel's head, everything went quiet. It was like that moment in movies when the background noise fades away and you can only focus on one thing. That's how it felt. She started walking, not toward the counter where everyone usually goes to order. She was walking across the room, and Daniel realized, with a sudden jolt in his chest, that she was walking in his direction. His fingers stopped moving on the keyboard. His breath caught in his throat. Was she coming to him? Did he know her from somewhere? His mind raced through possibilities. Maybe they met at some event he forgot about. Maybe she was a client. Maybe she recognized him from social media. Each step she took made his heart beat faster. Daniel could feel sweat forming on his palms. This was ridiculous. He was a grown man, 28 years old, and here he was getting nervous because a stranger was walking near his table. She got closer. 5 steps away. 4 steps. 3 steps. Daniel's mind went completely blank. What should he say? Should he smile? Should he say hello first? Should he wait for her to speak? His body felt frozen, like someone had pressed a pause button on him. She stopped right at his table, right there, standing in front of him with a slight smile on her face. Daniel looked up at her, his eyes probably wider than they should be. He could see tiny raindrops still clinging to her hair. She had a small scar above her left eyebrow. Her eyes were bright, full of life. She opened her mouth to speak. This was it. Daniel tried to make his brain work. Say something. Anything. Even just hi would be fine. But nothing came out. He just sat there, staring at her like a statue. His throat felt dry. His tongue felt heavy. "Is this chair taken?" she asked, pointing to the chair across from him. That was it. That was all she said. Such simple words. Daniel's brain tried to process them. Chair. Taken. She wants the chair. Not to sit with him. Just the chair. Before he could even move his lips to respond, she was already reaching for it. "Thanks so much. My friend grabbed a table, but there's no chair. You're a lifesaver." She pulled the chair away from his table, still smiling. A polite, friendly smile. Nothing more. She gave him a small nod like a thank you and turned around. Daniel watched as she carried the chair to a table behind him where another woman was sitting, waving at her. And just like that, she was gone, back to her friend, laughing about something, completely unaware that Daniel's entire world had just tilted on its axis. He sat there for a full minute, not moving. His coffee was definitely cold now. His laptop screen had gone dark. Slowly, reality came back into focus. The noise of the coffee shop returned, the music, the chatter, the hissing of the espresso machine. Daniel felt like an absolute fool. She wasn't coming to talk to him. She just needed a chair, a simple, innocent request, and he couldn't even say one word. Not even sure or go ahead. He just froze like a deer in headlights. He glanced over his shoulder, trying to be subtle about it. She was sitting with her friend now, both of them looking at something on a phone, laughing. She looked so at ease, so confident, like walking across a crowded room and asking a stranger for a chair was the most natural thing in the world. Daniel turned back to his laptop and tried to focus on his work, but the bakery logo suddenly seemed incredibly unimportant. His mind kept replaying those few seconds over and over. The way she walked, the way she smiled, the way she asked such a simple question while he sat there like a broken robot. The worst part was that he could have said something. After she took the chair, he could have made a joke, could have introduced himself, could have done anything other than just sit there in silence. But he didn't. The moment came and went, and he let it slip through his fingers without even trying to hold on. Daniel packed up his laptop earlier than usual that night. He couldn't concentrate anymore. As he walked out into the rain, pulling his hood over his head, he couldn't help but think about how differently that moment could have gone. What if he had smiled? What if he had said something funny? What if he had been brave enough to keep the conversation going even just for a minute? But he wasn't brave. He was frozen. And now she was just another stranger in a coffee shop, someone he'd probably never see again. The rain soaked through his shoes as he walked to his car. He sat in the driver's seat for a moment before starting the engine, watching the raindrops race down the windshield. Somewhere in his chest there was a strange feeling, not quite sadness, not quite regret, something in between. Daniel started the car and drove home through the rainy streets. The city lights blurred through the wet windows. When he got home, he made dinner, watched some television and went to bed, Just another ordinary Thursday night. Except it wasn't ordinary. Not really. Because something had shifted inside him during those brief seconds in the coffee shop. He didn't know it yet, but that moment of being frozen in place was going to change everything. Sometimes the moments that make us feel most foolish are the ones that teach us the most important lessons. Daniel fell asleep that night with one last thought running through his mind. He wished he could have that moment back. Just those few seconds. He'd do it differently. He'd say something, anything, he'd be brave. But life doesn't give you do-overs. At least that's what he thought. The next morning, Daniel woke up thinking about her. He tried to push the thought away while he brushed his teeth. Tried to forget about it while he made breakfast. But her face kept appearing in his mind. The burgundy coat, the smile, the confidence in her walk. This is stupid, he told himself. You don't even know her. She asked for a chair. That's it. Move on. But moving on was harder than he expected. Throughout Friday, while he was finishing the bakery logo and sending it to his client, he kept thinking about the coffee shop. By Saturday morning, he had made a decision. He would go back, same time. Maybe she was a regular too. Maybe he'd see her again. Saturday evening came. Daniel showed up at the coffee shop at 7 o'clock. He ordered his usual coffee and sat in his corner spot. He opened his laptop and pretended to work, but his eyes kept darting to the door every time the bell rang. She didn't show up. 2 hours passed, nothing. Daniel felt disappointed and relieved at the same time. What would he have even said if she had walked in? Sunday he didn't go. Monday he tried to stay away but ended up going anyway. No sign of her. Tuesday evening, same thing. He was starting to feel pathetic. His best friend Leo had called him earlier that day, and Daniel almost told him about the coffee shop girl. But he stopped himself. It sounded too weird when he thought about saying it out loud. Wednesday night, Daniel forced himself to stay home. He ordered food, watched a movie, and told himself he was being ridiculous. This wasn't healthy. He was obsessing over a complete stranger who had no idea he existed. But Thursday came around again. Exactly 1 week since he first saw her. Daniel tried to resist. He really did. He sat at home after work, ate leftover pizza, and tried to focus on a new project. But by 6:45, he was grabbing his keys and heading out the door. The coffee shop was busy again. Daniel got his coffee and sat down. He didn't even pretend to work this time. He just waited. 7 o'clock came and went. 7:15, 7:30. She wasn't coming. Daniel felt his stomach sink with disappointment. Then, at 7:42, the bell rang. Daniel looked up, and there she was. Same burgundy coat, same confident walk. She went straight to the counter to order. Daniel's heart started racing. This was his chance. He could walk up to her, say hello, make a joke about the chair, something, anything. His body tensed up, preparing to stand. He counted to 3 in his head. 1, 2, 3. He didn't move. His legs wouldn't work. Again. The same freezing feeling from last week washed over him. What was wrong with him? Why couldn't he just stand up and walk over there? She got her drink and pulled out her phone. She was smiling at something on the screen, maybe a text message. She looked happy. Daniel watched as she headed toward the door. She was leaving. Right now, this was his last chance. Move, just move. Stand up, say something. But his body refused to cooperate. It was like there was an invisible wall between him and the rest of the world. A wall made of fear and self-doubt and all the times in his life when he'd chosen safety over risk. She pushed through the door and disappeared into the evening. Gone. Again. Daniel slumped back in his chair, feeling worse than he had all week. He'd had a perfect opportunity and he blew it. No, worse than blew it, he didn't even try. You should have said something. Daniel looked up. The barista, a guy in his early 20s with a nose ring and friendly eyes, was wiping down a nearby table. He was looking at Daniel with a knowing expression. What? Daniel asked, though he knew exactly what the barista meant. The girl in the burgundy coat. You've been coming in here every night this week, always looking at the door. And just now you were staring at her like you wanted to say something. So why didn't you? Daniel felt his face heat up. Was he really that obvious? I don't know what you're talking about. The barista laughed. Sure you don't. Look, it's none of my business. But she comes in here every Tuesday and Thursday around this time. Regular customer. So if you want to talk to her, you've got plenty of chances. Every Tuesday and Thursday. Daniel's mind latched onto that information. That meant he had 4 days until the next Thursday. 4 days to prepare. 4 days to figure out what to say. Daniel thanked the barista and left the coffee shop. As he walked to his car, his mind was already working. He needed help, real help. He couldn't keep doing this frozen statue routine every time he saw her. It was time to stop being passive and start being brave. That night, he called his sister Maya. She was 2 years younger than him, but 10 times bolder. She'd always been the confident one in the family. The one who jumped into things without overthinking. The one who actually lived life instead of just watching it happen. I need your help with something, Daniel said when she answered. Is this about that girl you mentioned last month? The one from the coffee shop? No, that was different. This is someone new, and I really messed it up. Twice. Maya laughed, but not in a mean way. Okay, tell me everything. Daniel told her the whole story. The rain, the burgundy coat, the chair, the frozen feeling, the wasted opportunities. Maya listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her. When he finished, there was a moment of silence. Then Maya said, You know what your problem is? You think too much. You're so worried about saying the perfect thing that you end up saying nothing. And nothing is always the worst option. So what do? You practice. Starting right now. We're going to role-play this until you can talk to a woman without your brain shutting down. Come on, I'll be her. What do you say? For the next hour, Daniel practiced with his sister. Different opening lines. Different scenarios. Different ways to start a conversation. Some of his attempts were terrible. Some were okay. But with each one, he felt a tiny bit less nervous. The words started to feel more natural in his mouth. By the end of the call, Maya gave him one last piece of advice. Remember, she's just a person. Just a regular human being who eats breakfast and gets annoyed at traffic, and probably has insecurities just like you. You're putting her on this pedestal in your mind. But she's not a goddess. She's just someone who might be interesting to talk to. And if she doesn't want to talk, that's fine too. Rejection isn't death. You know what's worse than rejection? Regret. The wondering of what could have been. Daniel went to bed that night feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, actual hope. Tuesday and Thursday were coming. He had a pattern now. He had a plan. And this time he wasn't going to freeze. The weekend passed slowly. Daniel spent Saturday afternoon at a coffee shop on the other side of town, practicing his conversation skills. He struck up small talk with the person next to him about the weather. Nothing deep, nothing memorable, but it was progress. Baby steps. At Sunday, he went to his friend Leo's apartment for a small gathering. Usually Daniel would find a corner and stick to it all night, talking only to people he already knew. But this time he made an effort. He introduced himself to Leo's cousin. He joined a conversation about basketball even though he barely knew anything about sports. He laughed more, smiled more, tried to be more present. Leo pulled him aside at one point. "Dude, you're acting different tonight. What's going on?" "I'm trying to be less stuck," Daniel said. "Does that make sense?" Leo nodded slowly. "Yeah, actually. It does, and honestly, it's good. You've been in your shell for too long." Monday came and went. Tuesday morning, Daniel woke up with butterflies in his stomach. Tonight was the night. She'd be there. The barista had said Tuesdays and Thursdays. Daniel had 3 different opening lines memorized. He'd practiced in the mirror until he felt stupid. But he was ready, or at least as ready as he'd ever be. He got to the coffee shop at 6:30, earlier than usual. He wanted to be settled in, calm, prepared. He ordered his coffee and sat down in his spot. But this time he chose a table that was more visible, closer to the counter. Better position for starting a conversation. 7 o'clock came. The door opened several times. Different people, not her. Daniel's confidence started to waver. What if she didn't come today? What if she changed her schedule? 7:15, 7:30. The coffee shop was getting crowded now. Daniel's coffee was almost gone. He ordered another one just to have something to do with his hands. Then at 7:38 the bell rang. Daniel looked up and his heart jumped. There she was. Burgundy coat. But something was different. She wasn't alone. A man walked in behind her. Tall guy, probably in his 30s, wearing a nice jacket. They were talking to each other, laughing about something. They walked up to the counter together. She said something and the man laughed again, touching her shoulder briefly. Daniel felt his stomach drop. Boyfriend. Had to be. Of course she had a boyfriend. Someone like her. Confident and beautiful and put together, obviously wouldn't be single. What was he even thinking? He watched as they ordered their drinks. They seemed comfortable with each other. Familiar. The way people look when they've known each other for a while. The man paid for both drinks. Classic date move, or boyfriend move. Either way, Daniel's carefully built confidence crumbled like a sandcastle in the tide. They got their drinks and found a table on the opposite side of the coffee shop. Daniel could see them talking, see her smiling. He felt like an idiot. All that preparation, all that practice, all that hope, for nothing. He closed his laptop and packed his bag. He couldn't stay here and watch her have coffee with another guy. It was too painful, too embarrassing. Not that she knew he existed, not that it mattered, but still, he needed to leave. As Daniel walked out into the cool evening air, he felt something heavy settle in his chest. Disappointment, sure, but also something else, a kind of clarity. He'd been building this whole fantasy in his head about a woman he didn't even know. He'd invented an entire connection that didn't exist. And now reality had slapped him in the face. Maybe this was for the best. Maybe this was the universe telling him to stop obsessing over a stranger and focus on his actual life. He had work to do, projects to complete, a real life to live. Not some imaginary romance with a coffee shop girl who didn't know his name. Daniel drove home and made dinner. Pasta with tomato sauce, simple, easy, mindless. He ate while scrolling through his phone, trying not to think about the coffee shop, trying not to think about the burgundy coat, trying not to think about the man who made her laugh. Later that night, lying in bed, Daniel made a decision. He was done. Done with the coffee shop at 7 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Done with the waiting and hoping. Done with freezing up and feeling foolish. It was time to move forward. Time to let go of this weird obsession before it got even more pathetic. The next 2 weeks passed, and Daniel kept his promise to himself. He went to different coffee shops to work. He threw himself into his projects. He accepted more social invitations. He even updated his dating profile and went on one lukewarm date with a woman named Patricia, who talked mostly about her cat. Life moved on. The seasons began to change. The weather got a bit cooler. Daniel found new routines, new rhythms. Sometimes late at night he'd think about the burgundy coat, about the moment she walked across the room, about how frozen he felt. But the thoughts came less frequently now. The sharp edge of regret had dulled into something softer, something easier to live with. Daniel told himself he was over it. Told himself he'd learned his lesson about building fantasy connections with strangers. Told himself that real life doesn't work like romantic movies. People have boyfriends. Timing is wrong. Some moments aren't meant to become stories. But deep down, in a place he didn't like to examine too closely, there was still a small spark, a tiny ember of what if that refused to die completely. Life has a funny way of surprising us. Sometimes the stories we think are over are actually just getting started. Sometimes the universe has a different plan than the one we've made for ourselves. Daniel didn't know it yet, but his story with the burgundy coat wasn't finished. Not even close. The next chapter was waiting for him in the most unexpected place at the most unexpected time. All he had to do was show up. Saturday afternoon, 2 weeks after seeing her with the tall man, Daniel found himself in a bookstore. He didn't usually come here, but he was working on a restaurant redesign project and needed some inspiration. The client wanted something modern but warm, industrial but inviting. Daniel had searched online for ideas but wasn't finding what he needed. Sometimes you just had to look at real books, flip through real pages, see real examples. The bookstore was quiet, peaceful, just the sound of pages turning and quiet footsteps on wooden floors. Daniel wandered through the design section, running his fingers along the spines of books. Photography, interior design, urban planning. Then he saw it. Architecture section. Perfect. He scanned the titles until one caught his eye. A book about sustainable restaurant design. Exactly what he needed. He reached for it just as another hand reached for the same book from the opposite side of the shelf. Their fingers touched for a brief second. Both pulled back. "Sorry," Daniel said automatically, looking up to see who else wanted the book. And there she was. Burgundy coat girl. Except she wasn't wearing the burgundy coat today. Just jeans and a simple gray sweater. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. No rain, no dramatic entrance. Just a regular woman reaching for a regular book on a regular Saturday. For a second, neither of them moved. Then her eyes widened slightly. "Coffee shop guy," she said. And she smiled. Not a polite stranger smile. A smile of recognition. Of remembering. She remembered him. How? Why? Daniel's brain struggled to catch up with reality. "Say something, anything, don't freeze." "Not again, that's me," he managed. His voice sounded strange to his ears. "The guy who sits in the corner and gives up chairs." She laughed. Actually laughed. It was a nice sound. "I felt bad about that. I didn't even give you a chance to answer before I just took it." "No, it's fine. It was just a chair." Daniel could feel his heart pounding, but his words were coming out. He was doing it. Having an actual conversation. You needed it. Your friend needed it. It all worked out. Still, I could have been more polite about it. She tilted her head toward the book they'd both reached for. "You into architecture?" "Not exactly. Graphic designer. Working on a restaurant project. Need some ideas for the space layout. How form and function work together. You know." He was talking too much, rambling. "Stop rambling." "What about you?" "I'm actually an architect. So this is basically my job." She pulled the book off the shelf and looked at the cover. "This is a good one. Really good. The author has some brilliant ideas about natural lighting and how to make spaces feel open without losing intimacy." They stood there for a moment. Daniel's mind raced. She was an architect. She came to this bookstore. She remembered him from the coffee shop. The tall man wasn't here with her. This was happening. This was actually happening. "I've seen you at the coffee shop more than once," she said, her voice softer now. "You're always working on something. Always look really focused." "Yeah, that's kind of my zone. Coffee shops, laptops, pretending I'm more productive than I actually am." Why did he say that? Why couldn't he just be cool? But she laughed again. "I get that. Sometimes I go there just to be around people, even though I'm working alone. Makes me feel less isolated, you know?" Daniel nodded. "Exactly. That's exactly it." There was a pause. Not an awkward one. More like both of them were trying to figure out what to say next. Daniel remembered his sister's advice. Don't overthink. Just be honest. Be human. I thought about saying hi to you at the coffee shop, Daniel admitted, but I always chickened out. Thought you'd think it was weird if some random guy just started talking to you. She looked surprised. Really? I kind of thought maybe you weren't interested, or that you were really serious about your work and didn't want to be bothered. No, not at all. I'm just not great at talking to people I don't know. It's stupid, I know. It's not stupid. Her voice was gentle. A lot of people feel that way. I pretend to be confident, but honestly, half the time I'm just faking it until I feel it. You seem pretty confident to me, the way you walked across that coffee shop to get the chair. It looked so easy for you. She laughed and shook her head. That was me forcing myself to be bold. I'd had a terrible day at work and I was going to meet my friend to vent about it. I almost canceled because I felt so anxious, but I made myself go. Made myself walk in there even though I wanted to just go home and hide. Sometimes you just have to fake courage until real courage shows up. Daniel felt something shift inside him. She wasn't some perfect, fearless person. She was real. Human. Someone who struggled with the same things he did. So, she said, holding up the book, do you want this one? Or should I take it? You take it. You'll actually understand all the technical stuff. I'll find something else. Or, she said, and there was something different in her voice now. Something lighter. We could both look at it. There's a cafe upstairs. We could grab coffee and flip through it together. You can get your ideas for your restaurant and I can geek out about architectural theory. Win-win. Was she asking him to have coffee with her? Daniel's first instinct was to doubt himself. Maybe she was just being nice. Just being polite. But then he looked at her face and saw something there. Interest, real interest, yeah, he said. That sounds good. That sounds really good. They walked upstairs together to the cafe, found a table by the window, ordered coffee, and they talked. Really talked. Not the frozen, awkward interaction from the coffee shop. A real conversation. She told him her name was Ava. She'd been an architect for 5 years. She loved sustainable design, hated office politics, and had a slight addiction to true crime podcasts. Daniel told her about his graphic design work, about how he'd always wanted to do something creative but thought it was impractical, how his parents wanted him to be an engineer, how he finally decided to follow his own path even though it meant disappointing them. The conversation flowed easily. They looked at the book together, pointing out interesting pages, sharing ideas. Ava got excited about passive solar design, and Daniel found himself genuinely interested, not because of the architecture, but because of the way her eyes lit up when she talked about it. An hour passed. Then 2. The cafe started getting ready to close. Daniel couldn't believe how fast the time had gone. This was what conversation was supposed to feel like. Easy, natural, like talking to someone you'd known for years instead of just meeting. As they walked out of the bookstore together, the late afternoon sun was starting to set. The air was cool but not cold. Perfect autumn weather, so, Ava said, stopping on the sidewalk. This was really nice. Unexpected but nice. Yeah, really nice. Daniel felt brave. Braver than he'd felt in years. Hey, can I get your number? Maybe we could do this again sometime, coffee or lunch, or whatever, she smiled. That same smile from the bookstore. I was hoping you'd ask. She pulled out her phone and they exchanged numbers. Text me so I have yours too. Daniel sent her a quick text right there. It's me. Coffee shop guy. Ava's phone buzzed. She looked at it and laughed. Saved. Now you're officially coffee shop guy in my contacts until you earn a better nickname. They said goodbye and walked in different directions. Daniel made it about half a block before he had to stop and just stand there for a moment. A huge smile spread across his face. He'd done it. He'd actually done it. He talked to her, had coffee with her, got her number. And it felt good. It felt right. That night, Daniel lay in bed replaying the whole afternoon in his mind. Every word. Every laugh. Every moment. He'd been so scared for so long. Scared of rejection. Scared of embarrassment. Scared of being frozen. But today he hadn't frozen. He'd been himself. Just himself. And it was enough. He picked up his phone and texted his sister. I talked to her. Really talked to her. Got her number. Maya replied immediately with about 15 excited emojis and a message that said, "Finally, I'm so proud of you. Now don't overthink it. Just see what happens." Daniel set his phone down and closed his eyes. Yeah, just see what happens. For the first time in a long time, he was excited about what might happen next. The story wasn't over. In fact, it felt like it was just beginning. 3 months had passed since that day in the bookstore. 3 months of texts and coffee dates and long conversations. 3 months of getting to know Ava. Really know her. Not the fantasy version he'd built in his head, but the real person. And the real person was even better than the fantasy. They'd made it official about 6 weeks ago. Actually official. She was his girlfriend. He was her boyfriend. Those words still felt a bit strange to say out loud, but in a good way. In a way that made him smile every time. Daniel had learned so much about her. She wasn't just confident all the time. She had bad days where she doubted everything. She stress-baked cookies at midnight when a project wasn't going well. She talked to her mom on the phone every Sunday morning without fail. She cried during touching commercials. She was messy in the most endearing way, always leaving coffee cups around her apartment and losing her keys at least twice a week. And she'd learned about him too. His quiet nature wasn't coldness or disinterest. It was thoughtfulness. He listened more than he talked. He noticed small details. He remembered things she'd mentioned in passing. He made her laugh with his dry sense of humor that took a while to reveal itself. Tonight was important. Ava had an opening at a gallery for one of her architect colleagues. The colleague had designed a community center that won some award, and there was a whole exhibition about it. Models, photographs, blueprints, the works. Ava had been excited about it all week. "You'll come with me, right?" She'd asked a few days ago. "I know it's not really your scene, but it would mean a lot." "Of course," Daniel had said. And he meant it, even though the idea of a room full of professional architects made him nervous. Now they were there. The gallery was packed. People in expensive clothes holding wine glasses. Conversations about load-bearing walls and sustainable materials. Everyone seemed to know each other. Everyone seemed comfortable and confident. Daniel felt out of place, like he was wearing the wrong costume to a party. Ava was in her element. She knew half the people there. She introduced Daniel to a few colleagues, and he shook hands and made polite small talk. But mostly he stayed close to her side, letting her navigate the social waters. After about an hour, Ava got pulled into a conversation with 3 other architects. Work stuff. Technical details about some building project downtown. Daniel listened for a bit but couldn't really follow. He excused himself to get some water and found a quieter corner of the gallery. He stood there looking at photographs of the community center. It really was impressive. Clean lines, lots of natural light, spaces that felt open and welcoming. He could see why it won an award. But standing there alone in the corner, Daniel felt the old familiar feeling creeping back. The sense that he didn't belong, that he was just the boyfriend tagging along, that everyone else was more successful, more confident, more important. The voice in his head that told him to stay small. Stay quiet. Don't draw attention. He looked across the room and saw Ava laughing with her colleagues. She looked happy, beautiful, in her element, and for a second Daniel wondered what she saw in him. Why would someone like her want to be with someone like him? Then he caught sight of someone else across the room, an older man, probably in his 60s, standing alone near a display. The man was looking at a blueprint with genuine interest, completely absorbed. He wasn't networking or schmoozing, just quietly appreciating the work. Daniel felt a strange kinship with this stranger. But then Daniel's eyes moved to someone else, a young woman, probably in her mid-20s, hovering near a group of people but not joining the conversation. She kept looking like she wanted to say something but couldn't quite work up the nerve. Daniel recognized that look. He'd worn that look for most of his life, and suddenly something clicked in his mind. A memory. The first night he saw Ava, how frozen he felt. How terrified. How sure he was that he couldn't possibly talk to her. And look where he was now, 3 months later, in a relationship with an amazing woman, at a gallery opening that terrified him, yes, but he was here. He'd shown up. Then he remembered what Ava told him that day in the bookstore. About faking courage until real courage shows up. About making herself walk into that coffee shop even though she was anxious. Daniel took a deep breath. Across the room, he could see a man standing alone. He looked important. Expensive suit, The kind of person Daniel would normally never approach. But he'd heard Ava mention this person's name earlier in the week. He was a potential client, someone who was looking for branding work for a new restaurant he was opening, someone Ava wanted Daniel to meet. The old Daniel would have waited, would have stayed in his corner until Ava came back to him, would have let the opportunity pass by, would have frozen. But the new Daniel, the one who'd spent 3 months growing and learning and pushing his own boundaries, made a different choice. He set down his water. He straightened his shoulders, and he walked across the room. The man was looking at his phone when Daniel approached. "Excuse me," Daniel said. His voice was steady, clear. "Are you Robert Mitchell?" The man looked up, slightly surprised. "I am, and you are?" "Daniel, I'm here with Ava Chen. She mentioned you're opening a new restaurant and might need some design work. I'm a graphic designer,